Welcome to the latest season of 305 Vox Populi, the 9th season, and we're kicking it off in style. With us today, we have Juan Alfonso, the president and COO of CES Consultants. How you doing, Juan?
I'm doing great, man. Great to be here.
No, we appreciate you coming on. And not only are you a great individual, you're a great town resident, but your story's powerful. Right, today, you're the president and CEO of an amazing company. You're somebody who's worked on $32 billion. That's $32 billion with a B.
With a B.
Worth of projects throughout our country.
Yeah.
It's a big deal. But your story's deeper than that, because I think your story is the American dream. You're a kid who arrived here at 9 years old. Talk to us about that journey, leaving Cuba, because I think a lot of people, when they meet you now, they're like, when people see successful folks, they say, oh no, this guy had a godfather, somebody helped. No, they don't know the grind that you went through. They don't know the hurdles that you went through. And talk to us about leaving Cuba as a kid and how that was for you in that perspective as a kid.
Manny, I'll tell you, I remember it as if it was yesterday, right? And it's crazy. It's a few years now. I'm not going to tell you how many, just so that I won't age myself, even though I really don't care. But it's been a few, and I remember as if it was yesterday. And it was really just one of those classic stories where you really just come with a suitcase, right? And that's it. That's all you bring. And I remember thinking to myself, and again, as if it was yesterday, I was in a plane. I was sitting there. And I was asking, again, 9, 10 years old, you don't really know a whole lot. You got to do it, and you leave and you follow your parents. But I was asking myself, why am I doing this? Why am I leaving my friends? Why am I leaving, the only thing I know, the only bedroom, the only living room, the only playground? Why am I doing that? And as a kid, I sort of didn't know, other than I was following what I felt was right, because, my parents were doing that. And then as you grow, you start realizing a little bit more why you're doing it. And you're absolutely right that experience shapes who you are, shapes what you do, shapes what you believe in, and it's built who I am today. But it was an experience that I didn't understand, and then as time went by, I got it. I understood it. And obviously my parents were that shining light that built, that space, that environment, those set of beliefs that bring me here today.
Yeah, that's really amazing. And that journey, getting here, living in Hialeah.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, that's where I started.
Which was the dream for everybody leaving Cuba, right? All the Cuban exiles, the vast majority lived in Hialeah. Yeah. And you went to Champagnat Catholic, right? Yeah. Shout out to Isabel Alonso, the Alonso family. Isabel's a great friend. But what a lot of people don't realize, when you talk about a private school back then in Hialeah, like Champagnat Catholic, those are working class people. Those were one of the few working class high schools that were affordable enough and accessible, because school choice didn't exist back then.
Right.
So everybody that went to that school, their parents weren't wealthy or powerful or well connected. It was all working class people. Champagnat, if First Baptist that existed back then you had La Progresiva in Little Havana. You had Reb Christian, Burrito, Miami. You had these schools that were that choice, that kept their tuition affordable, so working class families can have school choice back then, which didn't exist. Yeah. So talk to us about that experience, because again, we throughout our country, when people think of private schools, they're like, no, these are the elites of society. And these were schools made by people like the Alonso family, who purposely left, made sure the tuition was affordable, so plumbers, mechanics, everybody can have a choice of having their kids at a private school. Talk to us about.
Well, I want to tell you, I want to second that shout out to the Alonso family. What they did, right, for kids like me, and affording an opportunity, right, through private school, and in a semi-affordable perspective, right, that really changed and impacted a lot of us in what we wanted to do, because their emphasis on education was not just simply on being there, on going to school and attending. It was finding that purpose. What is that purpose? And, I'll talk a little bit about that later, because to some weird extent, right, at that early age of high school, in my case, right, there was a buildup and a sense of perspective, and as I said earlier, purpose in what you wanted to do and finding something that you were good at. And they really built that upon the kids. And then in reality, the school was really a reflection of the community, right? I mean, all the kids that were there were kids that lived or their parents worked around the community. So it was a reflection where those values, right, hardworking families, were reflected in what we did, in Champagnat, and then those other schools that you mentioned. So to some extent, there's vision as educational leaders and educational visionaries. I think it's what shaped the majority of us. Alex Penela, as you know, is a Champagnat grad, and there's been many others that came out of the Champagnat school system. So it shaped us because it reflected those values that were part of the community.
So talking about values and purpose more than anything. When you graduated Champagnat, and I know as kids that grew up in Hialeah, jugamos pelota, basketball in the parks in Hialeah. I mean, we played everything. Football.
We did everything. Third base, baseball player, right?
Yeah.
So a little bit of everything.
No, you're right.
Yeah.
But when did you make that shift in terms of the future? Because we all dreamed. The dream of every kid that grew up in Hialeah was to play in the major leagues, was play in the NBA, NFL, right?
I was one of those, man. I was one of those.
Exactly.
Yeah, I was one of those.
But taking that dream and getting everything that we learned from sports, from our schooling, from our parents, when did you put that together and you decided on your career path?
Well, it's a really good question, because so like a lot of kids, we graduate high school and you're searching, right? I mean, what am I going to do next? Where do I go? What's next, right? And I was one of those, right? I mean, I had a good background, I had a good foundation that was built through Champagnat and the high school, my high school years. You're absolutely right. Heavily involved in sports, played every sport. I think that I want to make sure I'm accurate on this. Hopefully somebody doesn't fact check me, but the first basketball team out of Champagnat came out of my school year, and awesome. I was a point guard for that team. And then we did everything else. But coming out of it, right, and understanding what the buildup or the purpose was, through the high school years, I came out with a sense of, what do I do next? What happens next? And following the same lines of Champagnat as a reflection of the community, I decided to go to another institution that really became, at the time, and maybe today, albeit a little different, that became a reflection of our community, which at the time was Miami-Dade Community College. Now, today is Miami-Dade College. But that community component of the college, really became something that was appealing to me, where when I was coming out, I was thinking, well, what's next? And I'll never forget a counselor that I spoke to right when I got to the college. His name is Nick Adamo. I'll never forget him, because he sat me down and he told me, find what you like and do it. And I thought, that's it? like that simple? And it's like, yeah, just find what you like and go do it. And I said, okay, right, I think I can do that, right? So that was my start, like coming out of high school and just trying to figure out what am I going to do, and I have to credit my parents, because they said, whatever you do, you can do whatever you want, but you gotta go to school. You got to go to college. So I said, okay, so I know I got to do that, and now I got to find something that I like. So, okay, well, that's fine. I can sign up for that. And Manny, the rest is just really history. It built a path, and it built a path where I had that purpose, where I created that plan, and I said, if I stick to this plan, things will work out. And I did okay.
That's awesome. No, you're right. Miami-Dade College, Eduardo Padron, back then, I mean, the doors that he opened for so many, I went there, right? That he opened for so many kids in our community that otherwise we probably wouldn't have gone to college or had that access to higher education. And that next step where you turned your knowledge, right, that you got at Miami-Dade. You went to FIU as well, right?
UM and FIU.
UM and FIU. When you put that knowledge base together, what was that next step professionally? Because that's that real step where we really get nervous in life, right? Because I still remember my first job, and you know him well when I worked for Ralph and then Eddie, and
that's right.
But that first step where you're taking now this theory that you learned, because the reality, it's professors teach you the theory, the knowledge, but now you got to put it into practice. Where was that first step where you were afforded the opportunity to put in your entire knowledge base into practice?
Well, let me back up for a second, because I think that there were steps within that educational journey that are relevant, because you do gain that technical non-practice perspective, right, in school or in college, university. But I think what I got mostly out of it, in addition to that, were the relationships and then the people along the way that became mentors to me, that to this day continue to be mentors. So there's that part. There's the part of, the textbook knowledge, right? And you learn from a textbook, you learn from a classroom, you learn from a teacher, and that's all great, and it all builds your career to some extent. But then there's some people that you meet that become those mentors for you that are lifelong, and they impact your career significantly. When there's this thing that it says that, so when you build your career, when you build your character, you have a boardroom. Who gets to sit on that boardroom? These are influencers. These could be parents. These could be, teachers. And there's some folks in my boardroom that belong in that college experience. So there's that. And then you transform that into work, right? So now you got to work, right? So I told you, I got out of high school like, oh, wow, okay, I got to go to college. I got to pick what I like. So I did all of that. Now I got to work, right? And that's really when you get to put into practice a lot of those things that you were taught. High school, when I talked about building purpose, college, when I talked about, building habits and learning that technical piece, and then bringing people along the way, or meeting people along the way that you take with you to your career. And you take all of that, and then you bundle it up, and then you're thrown out there to sort of figure it out. But there was an experience for me that really just shaped everything together, right? And I'll never forget this. I'm still a young architect working for a fairly large company here in South Florida. And I'll never forget this. I was sort of already in that mid-management level, right? Managing projects, infrastructure, roadway, hospital, schools, that type of stuff, which is what we were doing back then. And but at that mid-level where it wasn't senior enough, but obviously wasn't junior enough, so it's kind of like stuck in the middle. And I get invited to a meeting, and it was like a board meeting with some of the senior leaders, and I said, hey, just sit in the meeting and just kind of watch and see what we do and all of that. And I remember sitting in the meeting and seeing and listening to a lot of these senior folks talk, and I was like, holy crap, okay, that's pretty cool. But I kept on thinking, man, I can do that. I can do what those guys are doing. I can probably do it better. But again, I'm that junior guy, right? And I'm just supposed to be sitting there and just listening. But that became a moment for me where I said, okay, I'm going to now further develop and build my path into something that, remember that counselor that told me, find something that you like and do it. I'm going to build my path into this that I like, which was more of the strategy, business development realm of our business, that I said, this is what I want to do. I got it. It was like that moment that I said, this is what I can do. This is what I can do a lot better than a lot of people can. And more importantly, I love to do this. So that was that moment. And then you couple that with then another piece of my personal experience, which is, just being in that place, right, at that time, that allowed me to see it, allowed me to feel it. But then I also said, back to finding something that you like, focus that thing that you like and couple it with a strength, right? With a strength, something that you're good at, because that then builds the foundation for you to do great things, right? So a lot of people, what do we always try to do, right? Let's try to fix something that is wrong. Well, he doesn't like math. Let's make him do good at math. Well, no. A weakness is something that weakens you. A strength is something that strengthens you. So why not focus on what strengthens you? Something that makes you happy. They say that that employers have a hard time retaining because the environment in which the employees are working in is not a comfortable environment, nor one that they feel comfortable with. Why? When you peel the onion a little bit further, you find out that they don't feel comfortable because they're not doing what they like, right? There's nothing worse that we can do is to have someone that does something really well, but they hate it, right? And that exists. I'm really good at what I do, but I hate doing this. Well, those guys, you can't retain them. You can't keep them. So that really built that approach of, let's focus on strengths. If I'm going to focus on my strength, I'm going to start here first. Something that I think I'm good at, right? Something that I think I can do well, that I enjoy, and that shaped everything. It changed everything, Manny. Changed everything.
That is very true. And a couple points you hit upon, and I think for kids, it's so important for them to hear that when you talked about relationships, mentors, because a lot of times now people think, I'll burn bridges, I'll do that. I mean, and listen, life it comes full circle, right? And it's really important to foster those relationships. And where you're at today, right? As the COO, as the president of a company that has how many offices?
Right now, we have over 12 offices nationwide.
So New York,
Jersey,
Philadelphia.
No, DC, Texas, and then Florida. We're in South Florida, Central Florida, North Florida. So we're a few places.
I mean, think about that for a second. That whole process and everything you said, culminating with your relationship with Rudy Ortiz, right?
Yeah.
Rudy's a great guy. I mean, I've had a chance to meet him. I mean, the guy's super humble, right? How did that come to fruition? Because I think sometimes, and it goes back to your conversation about fostering relationships, about understanding your strengths. I mean, just walk us through that journey, because what you're doing today is pretty cool, right? From a kid who got here at 9 years old, to somebody who is the president and COO overseeing all these offices throughout the country in some of the biggest, most important markets. That's a big deal. I mean, how did that all come together?
So it's funny. It's a really good question, because you sort of reflect and you think back. Okay, so how does all of this happen? Well, it happens because you have a sense of purpose. You build your career upon your strengths, right? So what winds up happening is I start working for, as I mentioned, I get out of college. I have that moment, that boardroom moment that I just mentioned a little while ago. A friend of mine that I was working with at that place calls me, and he says, "Hey, there's this big company that is looking for a guy to run, the Florida market. You want to do it?" And I remember sitting there thinking, well, yeah, I mean, I can do that. Tell me a little bit more about it. Anyway, it all lines up, and I go work for AECOM, which is one of the largest infrastructure companies in the world. And I go there and I start doing what I do. I do great things, and get a lot of really interesting work, win a lot of work, collaborate with a ton of people, and the name starts getting out there. Rudy and I had a relationship from before, because we were working together, and he took notice. Like, okay, he's doing something positive, and not just positive for companies, but positive for the industry, positive for the people that we do the work for. For example, we worked on the hospital, Jackson Health System. They had that miracle bond, several years ago, which was to refurbish and to rehabilitate their entire health system through infrastructure and facility repairs and upgrades, which is a great thing, because that's a safety net, right? So for the community, for our people here in Miami-Dade County, that was a really important project. So we were involved in that. I was involved in leading and managing and doing the majority of that work in conjunction with Jackson Health System as their consultant. And Rudy just kind of reaches out to me. He's like, hey, you're doing a ton of great things. I want you to come run the company. And I said, well, I'm happy where I am, but I like the opportunity. And it's always been about, just taking that opportunity. When that company called me and said, hey, you want to run Florida? And I said, well, I haven't run Florida before, but yeah, I can do it. I got relationships and so it's taking that opportunity, leveraging the good things that you've done, focusing always on your strengths. And then, once you build those relationships, a lot of these things just sort of fall into place. And, that's when Rudy called me and said, hey, want to come run CES? And I said, hell, I'll do it. Why not? And never looked back. We've done great things. I've been there now. It's going to be about 2 years that I've been president of the company, which interestingly enough, and I think this is very fitting, CES was born in Miami Lakes.
Yep, very true.
So we were born here in Miami Lakes 24 years ago, with Rudy and a dream of creating a great company. But Miami Lakes offered, that area, that space for us to grow with its centrality, with its closeness to both our north and south neighbors. And what started out as a company of one is now over 150 employees nationwide and growing, which is the most important thing.
So on a personal level, looking back on the journey, right now you're the CEO, you're the president, overseeing 12 offices in all these markets, 150 employees, having $32 billion worth of projects under your belt. Going back to that flight when you were heading over at 9 years old from Cuba, I mean, how does that journey feel? Like, now that you could look back, and sometimes we're so busy, we never have a chance to reminisce and be like, man, my parents, I can't believe my parents picked up and left for me. And then they are living the dream through all their sacrifices. And look where, talk to us. How does that feel?
Well, obviously, the reason why I'm here is because of them, right? I just can't say anything different, right? They were the ones that put me in that position and allowed me through crazy sacrifices. My mom used to do interviews after work. She used to take me along. I was probably 10, 11 years old, and we used to knock on doors doing interviews for a company that she would get paid like $5-10 per interview. We saw everything, and I couldn't stay home. I was really, really young. She couldn't keep us home. So myself and my two sisters would tag along with her as she would do these interviews, and we saw everything. People that were extremely nice. We saw the good of the community. We saw the bad of the community, the people that, would just shut the door on you, wouldn't want to talk to you, would be rude. But I said, man, what a sacrifice. What a sacrifice, for all of this. So I cannot speak a single word about success without mentioning them because of their sacrifice. But looking back at it, as I mentioned to you, I thought, well, what the hell am I doing? Why am I in a plane? Why am I leaving? And when you reflect on the journey and you reflect on all those sacrifices, when you reflect on all those habits, when you reflect on all those things that happen along the way, you can only say, boy, I'm lucky. But then I say to myself, not really. I was born to do this, right? And you're put on a path, and there are certain things that are put in front of you, and then you take them. Right? Because a lot of great opportunities are put in front of us, a lot of great tools, great relationships, but we don't take them. But you take those, and then Manny, I'll tell you that the outcome is inevitable. It's inevitable. You can't argue with it. Now, also, I think along the way you build a certain level of trust within yourself, right? Where you trust what you're doing. You build a certain level of confidence that you can do it and that you will do it. And those are the habits that shape that path and that journey where when you get there, I'm lucky, but at the same time, I'm meant to be here. And there's no doubt in my mind that I'm meant to be here. None.
Want to take a little break to thank our sponsors. We're powered by Miami Lakes Automall. Thank you to Fred Senra. He gave the seed money to start this program. They're located at 16600 Northwest 57th Avenue, Miami Lakes. His phone number, you can reach him at 305-455-3510. They have amazing programs. You know, it's the end of the year, so you can get a good deal. Juan, you ever been in a mayor office that looks like this?
First time.
First time?
First time.
Yeah?
First time.
What do you think? What do you think about the mural?
I love it. I love it. It makes it look a little different. Makes you feel comfortable because of the color. So good job.
That's awesome. So Grisel Gajano is a school counselor at our public school system. But at night, she paints, and she's truly amazing. You can contact her via text 786-353-8608. And our film production team, Matter Lakes Broadcasting, they got 11 classes this year. 11, so it's 11 periods at Matter Lakes. They're growing fast. Brent, Albert, and Lou's back. So that is amazing. And our roadcaster was donated by Enrique Santos. Shout out to Enrique, Harold, the whole team. We appreciate you guys, and thank you again to all of our sponsors. No, very, very true, very powerful. And as we wrap up in the next couple minutes, talk to us about somebody at your level throughout our country, right? Everything you've done, how important it is to have a work-life balance, right? Because I met you on the basketball courts, right? We met coaching against each other and for years, you know, right? And I saw, to me, it's always so important to be there for our kids. So some advice, some perspective as to why you do what you do. Because a lot of people that are mayors or COOs or presidents of large corporations, they kind of like, there's no balance. There's no proper balance. How do you do it? What's your perspective? What's your words of wisdom of why that's so important in your success as a father, as a professional, as a son, as everything, having a proper balance in life?
Well, I'll tell you, you gotta keep things in perspective. You have to know when to say stop, I'm done, right? And you have to really put a balance into the things that are important for you. We all want to be successful. We all want to work, but we also have to understand that there's something else behind that wall, and something else that's important. Like you said, your kids, your family, all of that is important. And keeping that in perspective keeps you grounded. And believe me, you know, I'm all over the place, right? And, you know, traveling and running to wherever, Palm Beach, Jacksonville, DC. I'll be in DC next week. And you do all of these things, but you can lose sight of A, what got you here, right? And then B, how do you keep on going and maintaining that balance where you just don't get flooded into just doing one thing. And that's critically important, because at the same time, it brings you a little bit of a level of sanity, right? Otherwise, you know, you just go insane, think about work all the time. So you focus on other things. Interestingly enough, I'm back to coaching this season. I had left it for a while. I was hoping I would coach against you. And by the way, for the record, I won't play against you. I don't want to get beat up, but I think I can hold my own on coaching. But
you beat us many times.
But no, you got to maintain that balance, and you got to keep it in perspective. And you find out that you actually become a better professional when you're able to keep that, because you bring a level of humanity into what you do, a level of understanding, comprehension, empathy, and you do that by balancing family and other things that is not work. And that's my formula, man.
That's awesome. You know, you always got to keep faith, family, work, everything proper. So now we turn it over to you. You get to ask me or Albert 2 questions, and then we give it back to you so you can close it out with some words of inspiration, motivation for the future.
Absolutely.
So you're the host now for a couple questions.
So tell me. Okay, so I'll go to you, and then maybe I'll throw something at Albert. But so as you're winding down, you know, your tenure as mayor, I'm intrigued. You know, you've had a great career. I'm intrigued about maybe hearing what are some of those things that you're incredibly proud of and accomplishing, right, for this great town of Miami Lakes, which I love to live in it. I've grown in it. So tell me, I'm intrigued by that, because at some point we all have a sunset. We sunset something, right? Whether it be school, whether it be career, whether it be whatever it is. And we always want to go back and think of, okay, what is that lasting memory? You know, what is that thing that I'm going to leave behind that I'm always going to be thankful of?
Look, the main one for me is I'm leaving things off better than I received it, right? And that to me was so important, because I promised that to people 12 years ago. When I ran for office 12 years ago, I promised folks, hey, believe in me. I was 28 years old when I got into the race. It was 29 when I got elected. My birthday was right before the election. But I was 28 years old when I was campaigning. And people were very hesitant to entrust a 28-year-old with their city or with being on their council. But they did. And then I announced for mayor at 32 years old. And I became 33 right before the election. And again, people were very hesitant to put somebody there at that age. They were like, no, you could be my kid. You know, I would get that all the time. But they did. And my promise always was, I'm going to leave it off in better hands. So today, we have the lowest tax level in our city's history. We have the lowest crime rate, right? We installed an LPR system where before there was challenges, we were having issues. Today, crime is almost non-existent, right? Because of that. Last 2 nights ago, we caught somebody else. That wasn't easy to get done. There was a lot of opposition. There's still opposition today to that system. We reformed city government to be closer to the people. And one of the things that I loved the most was we humanized the position of mayor. Because a lot of when I was a kid, growing up in Hialeah, the mayor almost felt like it was Raul Martinez. Right? You almost felt like he lived in an ivory tower. Like you couldn't talk to the guy. Here, I almost made it to the point where I wanted people to feel like the mayor's your friend. The mayor's your friend. The mayor's your neighbor, and change the position to, hey, this is a temporary gig that you all gave me, not something that I'm entitled to. So, I mean, there's so much that I can go through in terms of achievements, but to me was that leaving it off in better hands, and then just changing the culture forever, where our community is closer together than it's ever been before in terms of people know each other, more open. The mayor's one of you, having that feeling that the mayor is most people in our town, they're like, yeah, I bet Manny's cool. You don't get that in a lot of places. So I worked really hard to change that culture and to have that openness. So but yeah, for me is that I love mission accomplished. Left it off in better hands, and left it off not only in better hands, left it off with, for example, 59th Avenue fully funded. It's the largest infrastructure project in our city's history. Completely funded. I mean, we got to see now how they manage it going forward, but completely funded. Things done. We were leaving dozens of stormwater projects, a couple road projects on 154, completely paid for.
Some in Royal Oaks, by the way.
Some in Royal Oaks, complete done or completely paid for. I mean, just the largest private sector investment in our community's history, the largest public sector investment in infrastructure in community's history, and that all happened under that culmination. But yeah, to me, it's leaving it off in better.
And I told you, just as a follow up, that component of accessibility that you bring as the mayor, it's something that is just different. I mean, you know, we were coaching together, and you know, there's the mayor, but then we said, hey, you know, we started talking, we started having discussions about things that affect, you know, our town, and that accessibility, I think, is what sets you apart. Look,
like I do little things, like I walk in through the front door at City Hall.
Wow.
Yeah, right. My parking space is in the back. There's days I walk because I go in and there's somebody waiting for a department. I say hi to them. I talk to them. Hey, what's going on? And most people are like, wow, like I got to talk to, you know what I mean? And I do that on purpose because I think it's important for people to see their public servants, to feel, to shake their hands, you know? So
yeah. Okay. Well, I got a question for the gentleman because I had a chance to kind of hear a little bit about his story before you walked in, and I'm curious about how you get into media and how you develop that love that you professed, as we were talking about earlier. How do you get to that? How do you come across to what you're doing today, which is very impressive?
Well, so basically, my dad used to work in television in Cuba, so
okay.
I would go a lot to his work when I was little, and then when I got here, Like I started spending some time editing and stuff like that, and I figured out that I liked it, and that's how I ended up doing it.
Wow. So we go back to a little bit about what I was talking about earlier, right?
100%.
You know, following up in footsteps, or following up on what somebody that could be sitting on that board, family member, father, mother, uncle, brother, sister, and then building a career, or building on something that you like, which I think maybe segues a little bit into, you asked me to maybe say a few things to wrap up. And you know, I come across.
If these are your words to wrap up, you gotta stare into that camera, because it's that you're talking to that next Juan Alfonso.
Is that the one that gives you the better angle? So I'll go to that.
Is it? I mean, we.
So it's interesting because I, as a president, as the COO, and then before that, senior executive for all these companies. I mean, I came across a lot of people that were applying for a job, or were looking to get a promotion, or looking to just better themselves, right? And the one thing that always stuck with me is that those that really were successful were those that stuck to, as I mentioned earlier, the things that they were good at, the things that they were strong at, and were really not focusing or looking at the things that weakened them or their weaknesses. And the advice is really that, you know, that advisor that 35 years ago or whatever it was told me, you know, find something that you like and do it, meant everything. At that time, I didn't know. I had no idea. I thought, well, that's easy. Yeah, well, I can do that, right? Anybody can do that. But it was so profound. It was so important. And it got shaped as I started surrounding myself with good people that were advising me correctly, and people that were interested in my strengths. And I built up on that. So if I have a message for anybody is look for your strengths. Look for the things that you like. Look for the things that you're good at. And focus your life, career, endeavors strictly on that. And as I said earlier, the outcome is predetermined. So, and I want to thank you for the opportunity to come here, share a little of my life story, and have your viewers kind of listen a little bit to a kid from Hialeah that grew up and is doing some really, really cool things with some really, really cool people.
100%. And there you have it. The American dream is alive and well. And Juan Alfonso is a perfect example that if you work hard, you're dedicated, look where you can be. So these are the stories that are so important to share to that next generation of Americans, because a lot of times people talk about the economic mobility, and this is a great example. You gotta work hard, you gotta be dedicated, and you gotta find that purpose. Tune in next Wednesday on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and X.